Hi everyone, my name is Rio. Sorry for my appearance. I've been trying to multitask and do some tanning and also do some homework, so I look kind of crazy. So the two different symposium presentations that I attended, and I attended in person in the Wyoming ballroom, were Mapping Different Forms of Prejudice Toward African Americans by Scott Frang and Vision Quest, but with Angela Jamie and Phineas Kelly. So the Mapping Different Forms of Prejudice Toward African Americans was actually very interesting, and it was a kind of a project presentation as far as it almost had kind of a pitch feel as far as like a making sure that the public was aware of what was going on, that it was open to the public, that anyone could access their information, and that we'd be involved in what he was working on. He's a professor of, I believe, psychology, and so it's mapping personality traits at the state level, like in that, and then what happens as far, so like prejudice with personality traits and how that affects social and economic outcomes. And it was really interesting. He said that regional levels can produce different of this prejudice can produce different levels of use of lethal force when it comes to like police officers, stuff like that. So the chart that I kind of drew a little map of, you can kind of see it in my notes right here, right there. Ooh, my nails look gross. Is kind of this four-way that that goes from low to high. So it goes low to high this way, and then low to high this way. And then there are several different kinds of like almost like racist. So if you have, and it's like direct and indirect. So horizontal is direct racism, and then vertical is indirect racism. And if you have high direct but low indirect, then you are principled conservatives, which doesn't necessarily, he said, doesn't necessarily mean that you're prejudiced. It just means that you tend to agree with the conservatives who sometimes can have prejudice and sometimes can't. So it's not necessarily specific to prejudice. But if you have high direct and high indirect, you are a modern racist. If you have kind of the best outcome would be low and low, and that's like a truly low prejudice. And then if you have low direct and high indirect, you're an aversive racist, which means that you have prejudice, but kind of try to avoid it or kind of try to hide it, and you don't really want to be prejudiced, but you do have prejudice. They've been using kind of samples from Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is really interesting, and kind of learned that that a lot of people in Wyoming are actually modern racists, which was kind of surprising to me, especially given the University of Wyoming in Laramie. So I almost wonder too. I kind of asked him this too as well in the discussion portion of it as to whether or not it varied by city, and he said it did. Kind of similar to Republican and Democrat, and he kind of compared the racist levels and prejudice levels to that as well. So very interesting, and basically the general consensus was that they were going to continue on with this kind of study, that it was kind of just at the halfway point, and yeah. So just kind of letting the public know what's going on and kind of this awareness of what it means to be a modern racist and how to avoid that. And there's little things that you can do and tips and tricks like that I guess that their website gives. And I haven't actually looked at that yet, but anyways. So yeah, that was very interesting. The second presentation that I did was Vision Quest, and that is basically an application that the AIM, American Indian, I can't remember, a Native American Studies or whatever group of people is starting to do for the Arapaho language, because the University of Wyoming was built on Arapaho land stolen from them, which is also why that teepee was in Pricey's pasture the other day, in case you didn't know. And so basically the idea that learning the language can help stop the erasure of the culture, and that people can now do that by interacting with the app. And the app is thus far only for students who are involved in the Native American Studies program, but yeah, it's really cool because you get to interact with campus, get to interact with animals, get to interact with kind of what the religion and spirituality of the Arapaho Nation is, which was really cool. Some facts that he said were every 14 days an indigenous language and culture dies, and language and culture are, he argued, the same. And then 30% of our world's cultures have been erased since 1960, which is a lot. So yeah, the I think that's the general gist of it, is that kind of just also, again, more of an awareness speech. And it was, yeah, and I attended that one as well, in person. And he said one of the quotes that I really liked, because I'm kind of a linguist, is language is person, is a person. So, yeah, kind of just the importance of learning languages. And that's why at UW it's so great that we have a lot of different language studies programs for different languages and a lot of abilities to study abroad. So, yeah, um, that was the majority of it. So thank you for your time. Let me know if you have any questions.